All right, we're going to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Vince Barnett, and I am the past president of the WPRA. We want to thank you all for coming this evening. Obviously, there's a huge amount of interest in this mayoral race, as can be witnessed by the number of people we have in the room. I want to just note that the last time we had a candidates forum was 18 years ago. 18 years ago. That was the last time we had an open mayor's race. And so this is the first time in 18 years, and we've got more interest than ever. I want to acknowledge and thank a couple of VIPs. Nina Chomsky, where are you? Raise your hand. Up here. The president of the Linda Vista Annandale Association, our sister association. Councilman Steve Madison. Ross Selvage, PCC trustee. And there's lots of luminaries in the room, but those are, I think, the elected luminaries. I'd like to start the program by asking Planning Commissioner Mick Hansen to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. So with that, I'd like to introduce our very own VIP, Jeff Baum, our president.
My other fellow neighborhood association leaders, John Dean from the East Arroyo Residents Association. First off, one quick thing, thanks to the committee. This forum has literally been months in the planning. And so the committee of Vince Farhat, Lane Kavanaugh, Justin Chapman, and Kenyon Harbison have been planning this since early in the fall. And the turnout is testament to the interest that this community has, but also the hard work that has gone into the planning. And it's a hands-on volunteer effort. As you can see, Kenyon is moving chairs himself, too. And we're going to do everything we can to try to get extra chairs. But for those of you who are tied up by the standing, this is being recorded, and it will be available on the city's cable channel and also through the city's cable website. I just want to remind everybody that WPRA is a nonpartisan, all-volunteer, nonprofit neighborhood organization. No one on the board has endorsed or contributed to any candidate here. We are here to provide a forum for members of the community to learn more about the issues and learn more about the candidates. And that's why we're here. And we are officially neutral as an organization in these city elections. I'm going to just also express my personal admiration to the 7 individuals on the dais here. They're the ones that are making the commitment to put themselves before the community out of their love and passion in caring for the future of this city. And I want to express my personal appreciation to each of them, and I know others will do the same. Lastly, this election was also several city council members were up for re-election, including our own council member, Steve Madison. And Steve did not draw an opponent, but I did want to give Steve an opportunity to offer some greetings and also say a word right before the forum.
I count 6 up there, so I don't know if Jeff's trying to draft me. But I really just wanted to express my gratitude to WPRA and to all of you, not just for this forum, which is amazing. I mean, look at the turnout, but also to the work that the group does and all of you do throughout the year. It's extremely important and extremely valuable at City Hall as we grapple with all the issues that confront us. You know, in West Pasadena here for the last 16 years, we've had 2 city council members, if you think about it, because I've been honored to represent our neighborhoods, and our great mayor, Bill Bogart, has also represented not only West Pasadena, but the entire city. And I think I'd be derelict if I just didn't say what an honor it's been to serve with my friend and colleague, Bill Bogart, and I think we should acknowledge that. Finally, as you know, I'd echo Jeff that all 6 of these candidates are terrific in their own way, and I think each of them is to be commended, and whoever is honored to be elected as the next mayor of Pasadena will have big shoes to fill indeed with Bill Bogart, but I know that with Bill stepping down, but I know that he or she will have the support of each and every one of us in this room. So thank you again very much.
So with that, we'll begin the program. I'd like to introduce Blaine Kavanaugh, the WPRA treasurer and our moderator-in-chief for all of our events. And he'll talk about how we're going to start the debate.
Well, the first thing is, congratulations on probably having the biggest crowd this courtroom has ever seen. The next thing is a few logistics that are important. First, many of you may have noticed that the restrooms you passed on your way here, they're most of the way back to the entry on the left-hand side. We will not be taking any breaks, so if you need a break, now you know where they are. Hopefully someone will save your seat while you were gone. The next thing is, on the slight chance that there is some sort of emergency, this room has 2 exits. Out this door, down some stairs, and out the double doors will take you to the street. Remember the down some stairs. The other exit is this way. Should there be an emergency, we will attempt to give you some direction, but the key elements would be part of this side go that way if you can deal with stairs. Everybody else go that way, and take your time. Clear? Great. All right, so we're coming to the meat of this session. I should introduce the candidates in case you don't already know them. One thing, except for a couple times where I will say, let's thank the candidates or let's thank the participants. So, back to where we were. I'm going to ask that we hold all applause except for a couple of times where we'll make it clear that it's appropriate to applaud. It is just going to slow us down to provide applause each time, and we really don't need to do that. So we'll be like the presidential debates on TV. We don't have applause along the way. Our candidates are, in alphabetical order, Jason Harden, Don Morgan, Jackie Robinson, Alan Shea, Bill Thompson, and Terry Tornick. And I'd like to thank them once again for participating and supporting this event and for being willing to take this job on.
Breaking the rules already.
The questions, we'll start with questions from the WPRA panel. These are questions that we've assembled, working together with some of you to make sure we cover the issues. It may seem like we're not asking a lot of questions, but since we have 6 candidates, it takes a while to run through a question. Our panelists are Kenyon Harbison at the end and Justin Chapman, both WPRA board members. The format, this is not a debate, this is a Q&A. We've asked that the candidates not debate each other, instead they respond to the questions asked. Each candidate gets a 2-minute opening statement. After that, we'll have questions. Each question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. Once we get through several questions from the WPRA panel, we'll have questions from the audience. Important thing to remember, if you want to ask a question, you need to come up here and speak into this microphone facing the candidates. I should point out that this session is being recorded, video and audio. We're also taking pictures. It will be broadcast later. You should be aware that your picture may appear, and particularly if you ask a question, your picture and name may appear. So keep that in mind. The candidates are aware that the microphones are live at all times, so if they don't, you'll be entertained. A couple more statements on logistics. We are running straight through from now until 9 o'clock. As I said, if you need to take a break, feel free, but we'll keep going. There will be some limited time to mingle afterwards. By the way, there is a drinking fountain down the hall. And I think that is it for now. We have a very sophisticated method of picking the candidate who gets to begin the rotation. Candidate number 6, Terry Tornak, will begin in a moment. So he gets a moment to think while I move over here. This is a kind of weird position. I have to sit to really use the microphone. But after Terry gives his opening statement, we will just come back through the rotation, Jason Harden, and on until they finish opening statements. When Bill Thompson completes his opening statement, we'll move to the first question from the WPRA panel. I think everybody's ready. So, Terry, you're on.
Thank you. Thanks to the WPRA, and again, to echo Steve's words, thank you to all of you for showing up tonight. This is an important election, and the WPRA is well established as one of the preeminent neighborhood organizations in the city. I know I read the newsletter, so that I rely on it for information that I might not otherwise have. This election is important to all of us, to all the neighborhoods in the city, and I've been walking the city for 16 months and learning what people in various neighborhoods feel about their city. I'm in the San Rafael Hills now, so some of you may have seen me in the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that I've taken away from that walk around the city is that people really love Pasadena. They're proud to be identified with Pasadena. That doesn't mean that they don't have any concerns, because certainly they do. And I think tonight's discussions will illuminate some of those concerns and help you to understand what some of us feel about it. I think that what I'd like to convey to you is that my particular combination of experience, work experience in the private sector, my service on the City Council and the Planning Commission, my educational experience as an urban planner will make me well suited to taking on the challenges and trying to be the guy that follows Bill Bogart, which is what the next mayor will be known as from here on out. So I look forward to tonight's discussion. I look forward to the questions, and I hope even afterward that we'll have a chance on a one-on-one basis to have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Jason?
Good evening, everyone. I too like to appreciate being here tonight and for the great crowd that showed up. When moving to Pasadena in my freshman year of high school, I immediately fell in love with this place. Since then, I've created my own business here. I've produced a local television show. I've even published my own magazine. And basically, I've done all the things I've ever wanted to do in life because of Pasadena and because of being raised here and being exposed to the things that I've been exposed to. I wanted to run for mayor to really bridge the gap in our community that prevent us from creating more opportunities for others throughout the community. I represent an area where a lot of people don't participate in local government, and I kind of wanted to be the catalyst for more participation. I do believe that we all have value in our city, that all communities are important in our city, and that we all have a voice. And I want to represent those from all throughout our city that may feel that their voices aren't heard and that they don't have a say. And I want to show them that they do have a say. And that's why I want to be the next mayor of Pasadena. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
Thank you. Thank you to the WPRA. You guys, you were the first group, I think, to contact all of us, and we really appreciate you organizing the forum. And thank all of you for attending. It's such a great group. My name is Don Morgan. I'm so pleased to be here tonight with all of you because I think it's a great opportunity for really some of our most engaged residents here in Pasadena to see firsthand just how different the 6 of us are up here in terms of our personalities, in terms of our experiences, in terms of really our view on what the role of the mayor is in Pasadena. I believe that our charter established an elected mayor to serve as the chief promoter of the best of what we do in this city, and to really bring resources to Pasadena to address our greatest challenges and our greatest opportunities. It's a different job than simply one vote amongst 8 on the city council, and because of that, the experiences that all of us have to have, the qualifications we must have to look different. And my experience is certainly different than anyone else up here. I've been working for the last 20 years with nonprofit organizations and with communities and governments to find innovative ways to solve our toughest problems. I worked as a fundraiser for nonprofits and really helped them build capacity, create partnerships, and expand their role to play a larger role in having an impact on our communities. At the same time, I've been a professor at USC in the School of Public Policy, and I teach graduate students how to take the best practices of communities from across the country and then bring them to their own communities and implement them. I've been fortunate through USC to work very closely with our city management here in Pasadena for the last several years on exciting projects like, the management of the Arroyo Seco and shared housing for seniors and workforce housing and the governance structure around how we partner to strengthen our schools. In all of those experiences, the best thing I think I've been able to do is bring people together who frequently don't agree with each other and find a way to work together to solve problems. I hope tonight's informative for all of you. I'm definitely, I have a sense that it'll give you a good sense of how different we all are. Looking forward to answering your questions, and most importantly, I'm looking forward to earning your vote so that together we can work every single day to make Pasadena greater than it's ever been before. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Robinson. I am the current vice mayor, and I've been a member of the city council for the last 8 years. First, a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Pasadena. I'm a graduate of PUSD and graduated from John Muir High School. I went to UC Berkeley for my undergraduate degree and obtained my master's in public administration from CSU Northridge. And in my professional life, I'm education policy director to Los Angeles Unified School Board District member Steve Zimmer. Like all of you, I love Pasadena. And I'm running for mayor because I believe that I want Pasadena to be the most progressive and innovative city of the 21st century. I'm running for mayor because I believe that it's time that all Pasadenans see themselves and their values reflected in the policies that come out of City Hall. As some of you may know, I did have to give up my city council seat to run for mayor. And I have made peace with that, and I'm okay with it. I decided to run for mayor because I felt like this was an important election and a turning point in our city's history, and felt at the time that the voters of the city deserved to have a robust mayor's election and a real choice amongst the candidates. I believe I'm best qualified to be our next mayor because District 1 is a microcosm of this city. We have very poor residents that live in District 1 as well as very well-off residents. And as council member for District 1, I've had to deal with all of those issues. The role of the mayor is not just to engage our electorate or the voting members of our public, but also to engage all of Pasadena. And so as mayor, I vow to engage all of the city and ensure that our values are reflected and that we are inclusive of everyone in the city. I invite you to join me in my campaign, and I'm most certainly asking all of you for your vote for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank WPRA for hosting this event tonight. This event brings back memories because I grew up right up the street on Kensington. And this is the first time I've been back in my neighborhood since my home was removed by the 210 and the 134 freeway. Right, so it's been a long time. But the thing I love about Pasadena and what inspired me to run for mayor is because I love this city. Whenever I travel, people always say, "Are you from Pasadena?" And I say, "Yeah," and I love that place. The reason why I love it is because it's given me so much opportunity. I'm a product of PUSD, graduated from John Muir High School, went to PCC and made sure I found a way to be a college student even in light of some of the challenges of being the 8th of 12 children from a single-parent household. My mother instilled in us hard work. She instilled entrepreneurship. We currently own a business called the Little Red Inn up in Altadena. It has been almost 50 years as an establishment here. And she poured into all of her children a way to respect our neighbors, to love the community, and to make sure we give back when we have the opportunity to. And I've always done that in my life moving forward. Not only did I finish up at PCC, but I went on and graduated from USC in 4 years. Started a business consulting firm here in Pasadena and has been in existence for 35 years. I love the city to make sure we carry forth everything we need to have. I also am a graduate of law school. I have a real estate broker's license. I've been involved with youth, mentoring, all of my life. I've put over 300 kids through college. I have a nonprofit organization where I fund kids to go to college. We call it a book scholarship, just to make sure their books are paid for. These things is what I learned from Pasadena, because when I was young, my neighbors used to ask me to come over and pull their weeds, to rake their grass, to mow their lawns. That instilled in me pride of community. So I want to make sure that all of those things are carried forth to today's present generation. And that's why I'm running for mayor, is to make sure it's carried forward. And those are the values of Pasadena, is to keep moving those things forward and not to lose them to today's new environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Bill?
I have to start by telling you that it's a little bit awkward sitting in this position because I'm accustomed to standing at that podium out there and speaking to the panel of judges from that perspective. My background is that of being an intellectual property lawyer, specializing in patents, trademarks, copyrights, and that type of thing. And so I have had the pleasure a number of times to be in this courtroom arguing cases before the Ninth Circuit. So a little bit different, but I welcome the opportunity. As many of you know, I have served in the past as the mayor of Pasadena, and also worked with Bill Bogart his first time around as mayor a number of years ago. In that position, we both had the opportunity to work with Judge Chambers, who helped convince the government that this place, which at the time was kind of a neglected, vacant site, ought to be converted into a courthouse. And Judge Chambers, if you ever knew him, was persistent. He would not give up, and by golly, he was successful. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of that as well. There are a few issues that I'd like to raise that I hope we discuss in more depth this evening. First is the matter of what's happening at City Hall and the need to find out what's happening with our taxpayer money. We've had a lot of publicity on that recently. But we need to have a thorough public review and a discussion of all of the city's operations. The city, we now know, has something like 131 funds where money goes into. The underground utility fund is the one that's taken the headlines. We really need to know what happened there. Where did the money go? We need to make certain that it's not going to happen again. We need to have a thorough review of all the city's operations and have the same confidence down the line on that. The second thing I would say is, how do we bring business to Pasadena? Why do businesses leave? Avery Dennison, after 30+ years, now has headquarters in Glendale. Why is that? What happened? And why do we not work with them to keep them here in Pasadena? So we need to promote the Pasadena brand and work with our property owners and developers and our community to make sure we get the right type of business, particularly places where there are lots of vacancies, Northwest Pasadena, South Lake Avenue, East Colorado Boulevard. The third thing I would say is public education. I realize the city has somewhat of an unusual role to play in that, but I think we can keep on working with the city, working with Pasadena City College, where I currently serve as an elected member of the Board of Trustees, and also work with the Pasadena Educational Foundation. I have the pleasure and the honor of serving as the president of that. The oldest educational foundation in this state, been around for over 43 years, and throughout that time, we have contributed in excess of $140 million the public schools through PUSD at the city. So those are some of the issues I want to see we can do to help the district keep the K through 6 schools open and do things of that sort. We have begun programs at PCC working with PUSD to help students get their ability to read, write, add, and subtract out of the way in high school. It's amazing, but 65% roughly of incoming students at Jackson City College need help with basic skills. Reading, writing, arithmetic, the things that we all learned many years ago. So we've begun programs to address those needs with PUSD. And we want to make sure that when our children graduate from high school, hopefully from college, they can go on to college or at least get a job and work for themselves and support their families. So I've served as mayor before. I know what the job is. I did it before. I think I did it successfully. And I think I know I can do it again, and I look forward to that opportunity and excuse me, welcome your support and your questions this evening.
Thank you, Bill. We'll now move to the questions from the panel. And while the first panelist is coming down to the microphone, let me remind all the candidates that you have 2 minutes to answer, and I will give you a warning when you have 20 seconds left. I will note that some of you did a better job than others adhering to 2 minutes for your opening statements.
Debate that time.
Don't worry, I'm tracking it. Since Terry began with the opening statements, we're going to rotate through the sequence, so Jason will have the opportunity to answer this question first, and then each person in turn. And Justin has the question. Justin?
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. First question. Next month, Caltrans and Metro will be releasing the draft EIR report for the 710 freeway project. What is your position on the completion of the 710 freeway? What alternatives to the tunnel option would you support? And what are your thoughts on the Connecting Pasadena project? If it came up in City Council tomorrow, will you vote against the tunnel? And if so, what actions will you take to prevent it? And if not, why not?
Jason, you get to start.
Well, let me start by saying that if I did have to vote tomorrow, I would vote against the 210 tunnel and its completion. I do believe that it would be devastating to our environment in so many ways. For years to come, there are unknown unknowns regarding just devastating things that can happen with a tunnel that long in earthquake country, and even regarding the expense it would have and those effects on our community. I do believe that once the EIR is released, that we will have more information to substantiate our claim that it is a bad idea for Pasadena, and that we can move forward with other alternatives such as light rails and bus lines and things like that. I do believe that connecting Pasadena is also a great idea, and the entire redevelopment of our streets and safe streets and things that keep people moving, because that's what it's about. It's about moving people. It's not about moving more trucks and more vehicles into our area, because it's really going to be devastating regarding traffic and things like that. So yes, I am against the 710, and I would vote against it tomorrow if I had to vote.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
I'll start simply as well. Thank you, Jason. You were right to start this way. I'm opposed to completing the 710. I believe $10 billion spent on the tunnel is just completely ridiculous, particularly with a state that's dealing with huge issues around water and energy and education. I don't think you're going to get a lot of difference amongst the 6 of us in terms of that opinion, but where we may differ is in the role of the mayor and what we do with that. So, I will work with the 5 cities in our neighboring cities to create one unified voice. And that voice should say this: it's time to kill this thing. If 50 years is enough. If we're still debating this 4 years from now when we're going through re-election, then we've all failed, right? And I see some people in this room, including Joanne, who've been fighting it for most of those years. So, if there are no more work groups, what can we possibly discover at this point that we haven't already examined? I mean, I know Joanne at the No on 710 group and the WPRA have looked at very effective alternatives And so, you know, what I would say is we need multimodal solutions to this. I think we're all probably in pretty close agreement on that, but we have to address not only how, part of the problem is the 710 is addressing the way people commuted 50 years ago and the way trucks were driving 50 years ago. What we need to be looking at are multimodal solutions that are addressing not only the way we move people and cars today, but where are we going in the future? You know, I think we're talking about building a tunnel that by the time it opens, you know, we may be looking at different forms of transportation, different patterns of transportation, different people going to different areas. Thank you. You know, so I think we need to examine where we're going and look for more realistic alternatives that are not only going to protect our community, but also improve our quality of life and support our goals as a city.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
I have heard the voices of the many community members that have been involved in the no on 710 issue, 710 tunnel option issue. And if it were to come before the council, I would vote no. I would vote against the tunnel option. I think we have to remember that traffic is a regional issue, and not just with regard to this tunnel option, but so many other issues, including affordable housing. Pasadena bears the burden for our region. Some would say that's a good thing because we actually do make an effort to resolve some of those issues, but this is not just a Pasadena issue, it's a regional issue, and we have to look to our neighboring cities as well to help us get through this. At this point in time, I believe light and hard rail options are the best options for our city, but I think we also have to remember that even with light and hard rail options, the digging up of trenches, the destruction of thoroughfares or streets wherever it's determined that those lines will go would still harm somebody's home, somebody's business, and disrupt the fabric of our city. So we have to be cognizant of the effects of any type of construction, as well as be cognizant that we don't bear the effects of something similar that happened in Northwest Pasadena. So one of the candidates earlier mentioned the effects of the 210 freeway, which created some would argue intentional dividing line between the city. And so we need stronger connections between north and south of the city. And we have to continue to use our collective voices. As mayor, I would be very willing to write letters, testify before the board of supervisors, Caltrans, Metro, and other government agencies who, at the end of the day, bear the ultimate decision on what option goes forward.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Yes, I too oppose the 710, and I think I articulated my history of what the impact would be when those type of new developments come into play in our community. What my biggest thought would be for the future is education. We're going to have to look deep into alternative transportation, that is for sure. Currently, we're overbuilding Pasadena as it stands. As I've walked through many of your neighborhoods, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen me over the last 45 days knocking at your door, that my objective is to educate and to hear your voice so we can come to some kind of conclusion as to how we want to see our future. Not to be strong-armed by Caltrans or anyone else. That's the uniqueness in Pasadena. So as mayor, what I would first do is to open up a dialogue through a forum or holding some type of community forum for everyone to share what their sense of transportation should be here in Pasadena. Because there's not one solution. Look around us. Look what they're talking about doing on Orange Grove. Even more building on Orange Grove between California and Colorado. What do you think that's going to do in the next 2 to 5 years? I think we're going to have to explore a lot of options. We're going to have to become more educated. And we're going to have to really, really make some tough decisions. And I think as mayor, I would be equipped to move that forward for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Bill?
Part of the information that's become available to the public recently is the cost of the tunnel. $1 billion a mile, I think, is the estimate of what it's going to cost. And so I don't see that happening. I think a tunnel is an unrealistic idea. It's not going to go forward. There are also serious environmental issues associated with a tunnel in the sense that you have trucks going through it, you have to have vents. Where is the vent from the truck going to go out? The neighbors of San Rafael would certainly appreciate that, I'm sure. So I don't think that's going to get us very far at all. But what do we do? I mean, one of the things I had the pleasure of doing was attending the two Designing the Ditch workshops that were put on by Audrey O'Kelly and Mick Hansen and others. And we explored lots of things we can do. For example, some things, maybe making the crossings over the existing ditch there, pedestrian only or pedestrian and bicycles or something like that. So there are issues there to be explored. I also want to see us complete or take the gold line from Pasadena out to the Bob Hope Airport. Maybe we need van lines to make it easier for people to get to that airport or to LAX. One thing we can do too is complete the I think it's a green line that goes down toward LAX but stops about a mile from the airport. And the reason for that was considerable pushback by taxi drivers and bus drivers and all that, but that needs to be overcome, that needs to be completed to make it easier for people to get there. I've in the past, as mayor, served as the president of the LA County Division of League of California Cities, working with all the cities in this county, working together on things. And again, that background will be tremendously helpful here, as will the fact that previously one thing I did on a monthly basis was to have breakfast with the mayors of Glendale and Burbank so we get to exchange ideas, know what was going on. I think the same thing would be occurring now if I'm elected. I would probably add Arcadia and Monrovia and a few of the cities to those meetings, but I think that's something we can do that really needs to be done to get the area working together. And I think I've been able to do that in the past, and I look forward to doing it again. So,
Thank you, Bill. Terry?
I oppose the tunnel because I don't think it's a viable solution. I've studied the alternatives, I've analyzed the reports, and I've concluded that the purported benefits that would come from the tunnel in terms of reducing surface congestion throughout the region would not be realized. I think it's a bad idea. But I felt that it was not enough to just be opposed to something. I felt that in order for us to be effective, we needed to be for something. We needed to have an alternative that we could get behind as a community. And many of the people throughout the city are not as opposed to people in this room to the freeway completion. And so I thought it was important to follow the model of what we did with the citizen panel on Hahamonga, on the sediment removal project, and put some people together who might come up with a preferred alternative that we could adopt as a Pasadena alternative, and one that we could rally other cities around. And so that panel has been formed, and Jeff Baum is serving on that, and they're getting ready to issue their report, which I think will be useful to all of us in terms of determining what we should be rallying about. The problem that we're confronted with in terms of the voting is that we're hampered by Measure A, which was a citizen initiative that was, in fact, I'm glad to hear Bill's evolution in thinking, because Bill was one of the big proponents of Measure A, which prevents us from voting as a city against the completion of the freeway. I think we need to be cognizant of that Measure A, and that's why I think rather than focusing on just the opposition, we need to find an alternative that could include, for example, grades separating the intersections of Glen Arm and California, which drive us all nuts. And I think we can take this big public project opportunity, and instead of suffering with a solution that is, I think, correctly outdated, and turn it to our advantage as a community. So I welcome the alternatives that will be forthcoming from Jeff's committee, and I think it's time to move forward with this and adopt a solution for the region.
Thank you, Terry. Our next question comes from Kenyon, and Don, you will be first to answer.
Thank you all again so much for being here. Excuse me, I'm a little bit cold. In 2006, the Pasadena Unified School District closed Linda Vista Elementary School. Now, Sandra Fell Elementary School is the only public school remaining in West Pasadena. This is a highly successful public school which has seen wildly increasing test scores in the last 3 or 4 years, with surging enrollment, including my own daughter. Yet PUSD intends to close this school due to budgetary and seismic issues after the 2017 school year. We understand that PUSD is a separate entity from city government. But what should the city's role be in promoting high-quality public education? And what, if any, concrete solutions or ideas do you have to promoting public education in West Pasadena? Thank you.
Don, you're first to answer.
Thank you. Yes, I think we all, are familiar enough with this to know that the school district unfortunately had fairly limited available options around the school. And I think they would be the first to probably say they're very regretful that they're in the position they're in. But the option is clear. I mean, it's either to leave the school or to rebuild it, right? And if we're going to rebuild it, then we need to raise $10 million of private funds to do so. As a fundraiser, I think that'd be a lot of fun. But it takes some community will to get behind it and say we want a school. West Pasadena should have a school. You're absolutely right. It's a shame that I think some of the frustration in all of this is this sense that the whole process has been in a bit of a black box. I mean, the discussion about moving to Linda Vista, and then all of a sudden, the school district deciding they're going to lease Linda Vista to essentially a competing private school district or school center from San Francisco. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think as mayor, again, that the opportunity to support public education in West Pasadena or anywhere is to align a lot of the work and funders and people interested in our public schools, align that work in a way that they can really support that which has been cut away over the last 30 or 40 years by public budgeting cuts. We have 1,200 nonprofits in this town, a lot of them doing great work around public schools. There's one organization with 4 employees and about a $100,000 budget providing the college guidance counseling for nearly 4 high schools in Pasadena on their own, public high schools. These are the types of organizations that the mayor should be shining a spotlight on and pointing to resources to those folks and saying, if you want to have an impact on public education, start investing in those organizations so that as we align the work of those groups, we're able to raise the total achievement of our public schools.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
Thank you. As a Pasadena Unified School District graduate, I will be the biggest supporter of our public schools. Public schools should be a first choice for our families and not the last choice. I value our public schools and our teachers, and I'm proud to have earned the endorsement of the United Teachers of Pasadena, and I've built a record of working closely with the schools in my district, with the parents, the residents, and the school sites to resolve neighborhood issues that have emanated from the school sites. With particular regard to the issue of an elementary school in West Pasadena, as was mentioned earlier, the school district's hands are essentially tied. And as I've always said, my hats are off to all school board members because they have to operate in a vacuum where they don't have very many choices because they are under so many mandates from the state and rules. And so I would be a supporter of taking a very close look at the alternatives that have been presented by the school district, and as I understand it, that is in Allendale at the current moment. And I think as a city and as a city council and as mayor, we have to do a better job of supporting and promoting the good things that are happening in our school district. As at least 3 of us up here can attest to, as graduates of PUSD, there has always been the double standard of that there are bad stories that are floating around the community without people having ever stepped foot into one of our public schools. I think in order to change that, we have to work together with our communities, with our local media, to share the good things that are going on in PUSD.
20 seconds.
And so as mayor, again, I would support doing everything possible to keep a school in West Pasadena, but I also have to be realistic and understand that there are limited choices, and we have to look very closely at the alternatives and decide as a community, and especially as the neighborhood serving residents that are living over here, what you are going to individually do to make sure that we have the enrollment needed to keep the school open. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Well, I love this topic because I'm walking every day in San Rafael, knocking on doors, sharing with the residents in that area that I will do everything as mayor to save San Rafael Elementary. And I would look into any possibilities to revive it. I know that based on the current position, it's supposed to close in 2017, but I'm an optimist. The reason why I'm an optimist is because I believe in the public school experience. And I believe when the public schools show promise, as San Rafael has done the last 2-3 years, then we need to keep that strong momentum in our neighborhoods. Moreover, we need to make sure that we keep public schools on the west side. Public schools on the west side add value to your residents. As a licensed real estate broker, when new buyers come into town, they want to know where is a local elementary school that they can take their kid to or have an alternative. It has added value. So I would do everything as mayor to make sure that, one, we take every step possible to see what we can do to keep San Rafael as a school there, or the alternative, look at other methods to keep the school on the west side. And in closing, if we're able to save our fire station over there that's near fault by retrofitting what's needed, why can't we do the same thing for elementary school? That makes no sense to me. That's why I want to run for mayor. That's why I want your voice to be heard in San Rafael area. Thank you.
The mistake I think that the school district has made and continues to make is that they want to close the K-6 schools. The problem with that is that if you are living in a neighborhood and you have children of that age who need to go to school, you're not going to want to have to drive them 5 miles away or get some other means of transportation to take them that far. So they closed Allendale School in our area, again, against my objections at the time. And Linda Vista, the same thing. And I've worked with some of the people in Linda Vista to at least try to keep the kindergarten and the preschool operation that used to be at All Saints Church that is now operating over there, keep that there as well. The mayor is the person who's going to be the spokesman for the community in many respects, the leader of the community. I've done that before, I would do it again. By virtue of my serving as elected trustee at Pasadena City College and working also as the president of the board of the Pasadena Educational Foundation, I have good relationships with Dr. McDonald, who is the superintendent of the public schools, and a good opportunity, good way to approach him and approach others in the district, school board members, etc., and try to convince them that it is not in their best interest, not the city's best interest, really, to close San Rafael School. That's making a huge mistake yet again. And the enrollment of the PUSD is going down. If we're going to stop that, it needs to be done, I think, at the elementary school level where people start putting their children in school. Our children went through public schools here at 22nd Carlson and others, and they did very well. Today, one of them happens to be a partner of a major law firm in Los Angeles and doing very well financially, for which I'm quite grateful. So I think there are examples that we all point to that are very positive. So that's the approach I would take. Be the leader of the city, be the leader of the community.
Thank you, Bill. Terry?
The closing of the school is such an emotionally dangerous experience for the parents involved and also for the school board. My grandchildren, I had a couple of grandchildren at Allendale that were made refugees as a result of the closing of that school. And I've looked at the 7-Eleven committee report that did the analysis on the San Rafael school. I'm not prepared to second guess the PUSD board in this. They're the elected people that are responsible here, and there is no happy solution whenever anyone suggests closing a school anywhere. What is clear is that there is more capacity in the system than is necessary. It's true not just at the elementary school level, but more particularly at the middle school and the high school level. If you think there's going to be a controversy roiling the waters over closing the San Rafael School, wait till someone suggests closing one of the high schools, which is what's up next. But I think that the critical thing for us is to focus on the quality of the programs, not so much the physical plan. And we've been working for the past 6 months on a new entity called Collaborate Pasadena. We're 2 city council members, and I'm one of the 2, John Kennedy being the other, have been working with 2 school board members to try and forge an alliance that would be really on an ongoing basis, not a hit-or-miss basis, but an institutionally connected basis that would involve the city, the PUSD, the city of Sierra Madre and Altadena, the county, because so many of the kids come from those areas, as well as the faith community and the nonprofits, to work on an ongoing basis to make sure that the children are supported, regardless of which school they go to. And as mayor, that is something that would be one of my very highest priorities.
Thank you, Jerry. Jason?
Well, as mayor, I believe I will try to strengthen the relationship between PUSD and the city council. Recently, I was selected as a principal coordinator by the Pasadena Educational Foundation to explore one of our local public schools, and it was a charter school. And I was amazed and enlightened of what I've seen. It's been years since I've been into a public school. As a graduate of Pasadena High School, I am familiar with the benefits of public school education, but going back to a school recently showed me that there are a lot of resources there at those schools available for our children. And one of the solutions as to making these schools more effective is community participation. I think Mr. Morgan said it best, when it takes the community to raise that money themselves and to be more inclusive in the public schools and how we allocate the resources that they have available. I do believe that we need a school in West Pasadena, but it takes the communication of the importance of that public school. We have to show the surrounding community, whether or not they have their children in public schools, that the product of the public school affects the entire community. So everyone has something at stake when it comes to public schools, regardless of where their children go to school. And we have to communicate that idea. And one thing the city can do is increase marketing and promotion of our public schools, share the stories and the success stories of those schools and of the students that graduate from those schools, because I think people have a negative idea when it comes to public schools that isn't really the truth until they're exposed to what's really going on in our public schools.
Thank you, Jason. Question 3, and this will go to you, Jackie, first. Justin?
We know the Rose Bowl needs revenue to offset renovation costs, but what do you see as the right balance between events and neighborhood quality of life? What criteria will you use to support or oppose increasing or decreasing the number of large Rose Bowl events each year?
So as the council member of District 1, I am very intimate and familiar with all of the issues that surround the use of the Rose Bowl. And I've been very hands-on with the residents along Seco and East Arroyo Neighborhood Association with regard to some of the city's responses. It's clear that the city reached a tipping point this past summer with the events at the Rose Bowl. The events were too large and they were scheduled too close together. And as mayor, I would vote to uphold the current limit of 12 and place a cap on the number of additional events that the council could approve in any one event here. And so, of course, that would be with negotiation from the RBOC and a stipulation that events would be scheduled appropriately to weekend nights, which was one of the major issues with regard to the series of summer 2014. And also just the ongoing issues of neighborhood traffic, public safety mitigation, the process for what happens after events are let out, as well as the frequency of events in relation to the regular, normal event schedule for the Rose Bowl. And so again, I would limit the current limit to 12 with a cap on the number of additional events council can approve. And my suggestion at this point would be council would not be able to approve any more than two additional events as appropriate.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Well, I also like this question because as the chair of Northwest Commission, we get a lot of feedback from the residents in the area concerning the use of the Rose Bowl. I, as mayor, would seek to initiate a steering committee for the west side of Pasadena to make sure that the steering committee voice represents the community. I believe that in my experience of growing up here in Pasadena, in which when I was a little boy, there was only about 6 to 8 events at the Rose Bowl because it was a park, not a business that we're looking to sustain our city with. Now that we've converted it to a business, I believe that all the residents, especially surrounding the Rose Bowl, are shareholders, that their voice should be heard, and they should have an active role as to what revenue is made, how money is dispersed, and any type of need that surrounds this area. And if anyone is going to use the Rose Bowl, I believe that a full presentation needs to be made of safety, traffic, timing, to the extent that everyone is comfortable with how this process is going to move forward. I don't believe that any resident should be left out of this process on the west side because it's crucial. You moved here 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. You moved here because you enjoyed the Rose Bowl and you enjoyed it as a park without all of the traffic.
20 seconds.
We need to go back to those basic fundamentals with your voice being the main tool to make sure it gets there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Bill?
The Rose Bowl has gone through a very good renovation. The regrettable part is it's cost a ton of money to do it. And so as a consequence, the city and the Rose Bowl Operating Company are faced with the conundrum of how do they pay off a deficit but yet not unnecessarily or unduly inconvenience the neighbors. I must say that I was amazed. I had never heard of One Direction band. People were calling me, asking me if I could possibly help them get tickets for that thing. What the world is this? But one thing we definitely must do is say no weekday concerts at the Rose Bowl, because I know that when particularly the noise was all over the city, being heard very, very well. And so I think we can at least keep those on weekends and not during the week and have to suffer through the inconvenience of that. The RBOC, the Rose Bowl Operating Company, I had the pleasure of serving on that for about 8 years, and also a couple of those years as the president and chair of the board. And one of the things that we began doing through Darrell Dunn, the executive director of it, and we sat down on a monthly basis with the neighbors of East Arroyo, Linda Vista, and San Rafael, and talk through issues. Here's what we have coming up. We'd like to get your feedback on it and ways where we might be able to either change things or mitigate the impact. And so I think that's the type of thing we have to do. The Rose Bowl Operating Company does have representation on it from the entire community. Different parts of each council member has the ability to appoint one person to represent him or her on that committee. So we need to do more of that. We need to be very sensitive to it. But the Rose Bowl is the financial engine of the city in many, many ways. If you take away the Rose Bowl, it would be very difficult to have a parade, because the television revenue from the Rose Bowl game pays for the parade. The parade does not make money itself. And so there's some real issues we have to face up to, but the way we address those things and resolve them is by working together, sitting down together, decide collegially what it is we want to accomplish, how we're going to go about it, and then go and do exactly that. That's the way I try to lead. That's the way I would do it again.
Thank you, Bill. Terry?
So when Maria and I moved to Pasadena in 1982, The debate over how many events was the right number of events at the Rose Bowl had just been completed. And the ordinance was, this was a typical Pasadena debate with endless hearings and public discussions. And ultimately, it was concluded that 12 displacements, they were called displacement events for a reason, events of over 20,000 would be the limit. And we have betrayed that limit. This year, we had 18 events, which was a fundamental betrayal of the trust of the neighborhood and a contract that I think we made to the neighborhood. I'm delighted to hear Jackie embrace the notion of 12 event limit and with a possibility of maybe 2 more and then a hard cap. I think that's a great proposal. And what I've been doing as chairman of the Finance Committee is agendizing the Rose Bowl at every meeting that we have, twice a month, until we can get to the point where there's consensus with the RBOC. No one's proposing canceling the Rose Bowl game that I know of, but finding out from the RBOC how much money they actually need to pay the debt service, the operating expenses, and additional capital improvements over the next few years that will inevitably be required. Then we can work backwards and figure out, and we're also getting information for the first time on how profitable different kinds of events are. We haven't had good information on what we make on a One Direction concert as opposed to a UCLA football game as opposed to an international soccer game. So with that information, I think we'll really be able to have a coherent discussion and conclude how many events is enough, but I think there absolutely needs to be a hard cap, and I think the magic number is somewhere between 12 and 14 events.
Thank you, Jerry. Jason?
I do believe in limiting the number of events. I believe now it is 18, and 12 does seem like a good number because it's all about how they're spaced out. When you have 3 major concerts within a 2-week period, it creates a major negative impact, especially in the areas surrounding the Rose Bowl. I believe that we have to be a little more creative when we decide on which events we're going to host, and I do believe, as Mr. Shea said, they should be all presented beforehand to City Council and to the public, so we do have the opportunity to express any input that we may have on the event itself. To help with some of the costs, we do have the cost of the renovations that are an issue, but I believe that if we're creative with producing some of these events and having more local or community-oriented events, so they're still major events, but they're more geared towards the community, so there isn't a lot of out-of-town traffic coming into our area, so a lot of us can just walk or just take public transportation or local shuttles to these events and enjoy our own Rose Bowl. I do believe that it is ours to enjoy and that we should take ownership of that and really put some creative thought into creating events for ourselves that are major, that are lucrative, and that can recoup some of these costs, yet still exclude some of the unnecessary traffic from out of towners.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
Well, I think clearly, everyone who lives in this area is clearly very inconvenienced by these events, but what makes it taste even more like vinegar going down is the fact that so many of these events are being approved because of a $70 million shortfall or overrun, I guess, on the construction itself. You know, I plan and fund and build buildings for organizations for a living, and I'll tell you, in my world, if you're going to spend that much more money than you were budgeted, you have to go out and raise it ahead of time. So, you know, I have huge questions. I think the betrayal is around that question. You know, I'm curious what the role of the Finance Committee was in overseeing that $70 million overspend and where we missed the gap there. Now we have no choice, right? And so that's why you were thrown into a lot of events this year that you didn't really want. You know, we know that there are huge lessons to be learned, right, around the times of the events, the days, the frequencies. 3 nights of One Direction is too many nights for anyone on earth, even my 10-year-old, I think. You know, and there's still more that we can do to support the neighbors. You know, ironically, listening to all of you is where we get the best solutions for how to handle this thing. I mean, you guys have been living around the Rose Bowl for a long time. Usually you know the most pragmatic solutions. So, you know, when we do have events at the Rose Bowl, I mean, I agree with you, and I think that they should be used to benefit things that are most directly important to us as a city, not to pay a debt. And when we can do that, it may make it a little bit more palatable, especially if in the process we're also making it a little bit less life transforming for you to be locked in your homes during these events.
Thank you, Don. That brings us to question 4. And Alan, you will be the first to take this question.
As you know, a former analyst from Pasadena's Department of Works was arrested and accused of embezzling approximately $6 million for a decade. As of June 30, 2014, to the best of my knowledge, Pasadena has nearly $1 billion in outstanding debt, approximately half of which is not self-supporting. In May of 2013, the Fitch rating agency downgraded Pasadena's debt from AAA to AA+. In 2011, Pasadena bailed out its firefighters' police retirement system for the 3rd time in 12 years, and Pasadena now owes approximately $123 million on pension obligation bonds to pay for services received previously, some of which we will still be paying in 2041. What can be done, and what will you do to restore trust that taxpayer money is being effectively managed? And what are the consequences when it is not?
Wow. Well, I think that was a loaded question there for a number of reasons. One, we must acknowledge first and foremost that our system is broken. I mean, as a result of the $6.4 million debacle that we had at the end of the year, which we just found out at the end of the year, really put us in a dark storm here. I believe that first we have to hold those accountable who's responsible. If this is a matter of finance, you got to start with the finance department and those that sit on committees of finance and those who are representing you as residents, constituents, to make sure that everything is accountable. Once we're able to do that, then we can begin to allocate reserves, allocate funds to target our liabilities. Until we get that under control, get our confidence and our trust up with our elected officials, we're going to have a lot of problems. And I'm saying that because in my 35 years of being a business owner, I've had to make hard decisions, but I had to make decisions once I know the numbers and I could respond to my clients or those that I'm involved with. One of the most enjoyable experiences I've had, and I must say, as vice chair of Pasadena City College Oversight Committee, I've learned to have safeguards in moving development forward and budgeting.
20 seconds.
The reason I say that is because we recently was able to get the Art Center completed, $60 million project, beautiful, top-of-the-art building, under budget, on time, in a recession. That was done because we stayed on top of our finance, asked the right questions, and made sure we were accountable to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Bill?
The issue that is raised is an interesting one because, as I said at the very beginning, it seems to me that one of the key issues, at least in talking to people, the issue that comes up repeatedly at first, is the embezzlement. How in the world did this happen? For 11 years it went on. And if you look back at the record of this Mr. Wooten, at least as reported in the press, he should never have been hired. I mean, where was the Human Services Department of the City of Pasadena when they hired the man? He had a criminal record then, and yet he was hired, made off somebody $131,000 a year salary, and went on for 11 years. The most recent part of it, I guess the bulk of the money was taken the last 2 or 3 years of his tenure with the city. So I think we got to do a thorough investigation, public investigation, review, and analysis, and come away with confidence that we know what happened, how it happened, where did money go, and know this is not going to happen again. And I don't think it's sufficient to say that, well, we have committees of the City Council and they have oversight. Obviously, that didn't work the way it was supposed to work. In fact, if you go back and look at some of the minutes, In 2013, a year earlier, before any of this was suspected, there were records of a presentation at that time with respect to the Underground Utility Fund that should have raised some questions and caused people to ask. I think this was brought out in one of the public meetings by one of the other council members, but yet apparently nobody picked up on that. So there's lots of work to be done there. We got to go back, as Mr. Shea was saying, PCC, where I serve as elected trustee there, we did do the arts building properly and under budget and on time. That's an example of how you do things if you have the proper oversight, which clearly did not occur with respect to Mr. Wooten and the Underground Utility Fund. Hopefully, there's no evidence of that occurring with respect to any of the other 130 funds the city apparently has.
Thank you, Bill. Jerry?
So with regard to the embezzlement issue, in fact, Bill, if you go back through the records, we were questioning that fund in various aspects going back to 2010, not 2013, but it's been a long time since you've been on the council, but you know that the council does not get down in the weeds. The council is responsible for oversight in general terms. We have relied on audits, and I think what we've learned through this process is that audits don't deliver what people think they do. There are a number of investigations underway now that I'm confident, in fact, Steve Madison is heading the council committee that is doing an internal investigation. We're going to have a citizens task force to really restore confidence of the public that this is not something that is happening throughout the system and it cannot happen again. But there is there has been a culture of complacency, I think, within the City Hall because people are not held accountable. And now you've seen 2 department heads terminated, which is something that's never happened in the city before. And frankly, it's not over. There will be additional impacts as a result of what we're discovering. And it'll take some time to work through the system, but not a lot of time. With regard to the debt, just because I don't want to ignore that part of the question, the debt is significant because we've done projects that the city is proud of. The restoration of City Hall, the reconstruction of the convention center, rebuilding the Rose Bowl, even with the reference to cost overrun, the new power plant construction. All of that is appropriate expenditures over long periods of time, bonded debt. It's not accidental. The city is now in the process of rebuilding its reserves.
20 seconds.
We've been in the black. We've been in the black now for the past 2 years, and going forward, we anticipate that will be true in the next 5-year budget period. So there is responsible budgeting happening at City Hall, and sort of short shrift, sort of quick solutions and crying for and demonizing the entire workforce, I think, is not an appropriate response to this very serious event.
Thank you, Jerry. Jason?
To restore public trust, I believe that we have to eliminate the complacency in our local government. When you have positions of trust, it's not a good idea for folks to sit on those for long periods of time and feel that they're not being watched. When folks feel they're not being watched in any position long enough, bad things are going to happen. And as you can see, they did. I believe, and I've stated before, that the council sets the tone for how the departments are ran and how they operate. I believe that listening to reports is not enough. You do have to be proactive in managing these departments. You do have to go into these offices and stroll and talk to some of these employees and look over some shoulders. And some people might say they might not want somebody looking over their shoulder, but in a position of trust is necessary. And I tell you one thing, when you're doing a good job of what you do, you don't mind an audience. So there's a good reason for us to be involved. There's a good reason for city council to be held accountable for the problems that we faced. And that's what it is. It's just about eliminating that complacency, shaking things up and lighting a fire under some of these positions that have been sat on for so long. When you have positions that are just running unopposed and people aren't going for some of these jobs due to the complexity, you have these situations that happen. So we have to educate the public as to what's really going on. We have to be more transparent. We have to be more proactive. And we just have to be involved. And we have to show that the public's money is being used correctly and that the taxpayers do have a final say in what's going on, and we have to do the work that it takes, the physical work, not just managing and sending people off to do duties, but we actually have to physically check and make sure they're done. We have to be more physical instead of just sitting here listening to reports. We do have to be proactive.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
Well, I was disappointed, like so many of you, I think, when hearing the news, but honestly not that shocked. You know, I mean, I think Pasadena is far too sophisticated a city to have this go on for 11 years, in fact, especially with such an unsophisticated manner for stealing that much money. Someday they'll do a Sunday after school special called 4 Guys and a Bottle of Whiteout. You know, it's just too easy, right? But, you know, we've got, frankly, 40-year-old solutions to a lot of very complex, sophisticated problems today that just have to be changed. And that's part of why we need to bring new best practices to City Hall. We need internal controls, we need better audit, we need better transparency, we need to measure performance. You know, why was the internal audit function disbanded and defunded by the City Council in 2010? The fact that they didn't like the way it was running means they should have fixed it rather than just getting rid of it. Most of the money was stolen after that period of time. Why didn't anyone to this day ever actually ask for an audit? We kind of stumbled into this thing luckily. This is not the way we run our government. So how do we look forward? How do we make sure that every single one of our dollars is spent well? You know, I think that there are best practices across the country we have to look at. A city like Baltimore, Maryland, with so many constraints, so many problems, so much larger than Pasadena, has put a performance-based budgeting process in place where they've been able to lower property taxes, increase savings to pay for the types of things that you're talking about, and pay more money to programs and projects that have been important to them. If Baltimore, Maryland can do that, why can't Pasadena, California? We should be the model for best practices across the board so that other cities are looking at us and figuring out how to really replicate what we're doing. So that's what we're going to do going forward. We've got to talk about the future and what we're going to do and not spend all of our time figuring out who to fire this time. We're not going to fire our way out of this problem.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
Like all of you, I was shocked and outraged and angry about the news of this embezzlement. And as I've said before, all of the city council members, as well as the city manager, as well as the department heads, and even the employees bear a certain amount of the employees of those 2 departments bear a certain level of responsibility for this. Of course, some more than others. I agree with the city manager's recent decision to release both the finance director and the public works director, even though I admired the work, largely admired the work that they did. But I think that was just the beginning of what has to happen in order for us to move past this very unfortunate and serious event. If you read the report, this embezzlement didn't happen because we didn't have enough rules and regulations in place. This happened because the rules and regulations that were in place were not followed. And we can add layers on layers on layers of additional rules, but if they're not followed, they're still not going to work, and it can happen again. I support the mayor's recent appointment of the ad hoc committee of the city council to further study how and why this happened, and more importantly, for us to figure out how this can never happen again, as well as what will be the future appointment of a citizen committee to examine the 130 plus funds that we have remaining. This was a very serious matter, and as mayor and as city council member, because I also like to remind people that even though myself and council member Tornick are running for mayor, we're still existing council members, and so that doesn't mean we get to wait until this election is over to figure out what to do. And so as council member and as mayor, I am fully supportive at doing everything that within our power to hold everyone responsible for this grave injustice and betrayal of trust to our citizens and our taxpayers, held accountable to the full extent of the law. And many people have called for the firing of the city manager. I can't sit here right now and say that that is the best solution, but I would say at this point, while we're still gathering information, everyone in the entire city structure is subject to being held responsible up to and including release.
Thank you, Jackie. Question 5. That will go to you first, Bill.
Final
months of 2014 saw an increase of home burglaries and mail theft in Council District 6. What is your plan to reduce crime in this district and in the city of Pasadena? Also, please state what policing policies you would support and describe your overall philosophy about policing and the role of police in all communities.
Gee, I'm glad you didn't ask an easy question here. Goodness. I would have to begin, I can't decline or can't resist the temptation to say that, you know, if this embezzlement clues were evident in 2010, why was it 4 years later, in 2014, when they were really uncovered? But back to the question at hand here. I support fully a very, very effective police department. I know there have been incidents recently of the department and some tragic events that have happened that do not live up to the standard, anywhere close to the standard of our police department that we expect to have. But we have to have a police force that is going to be able to respond to notifications as given, police chief and others who are going to be in charge of it and able to make that happen. I think we also have to take certain responsibilities. We can put in place home alarm systems, for example, that if someone comes into your home without authorization, the alarm goes off, at least then you know, the neighbors know that something is going on, and the police can then be alerted. The police cannot be every place at the same time, for sure, and I think it takes all of us working together to make that happen. I know that there is an increase in crime. One of the things I would do is certainly begin working with the police chief and the department and the city council and the city manager and staff to find out what it is that's causing this. What needs do they have? Do they need more resources? Do they need more officers on the streets, or what? But I don't think we can just answer that question sitting here this evening. It's a very complicated issue, and we need to really dig into it. One of the main reasons that we have a city council and a city administration is to make sure that we have adequate police protection for ourselves, our homes, our neighborhoods, our city in its entirety. So that would be a top priority of mine to really work on that, find out what the problem is, and see to it that it's stopped.
Thank you, Bill. Jared?
Every month, I look at the statistics, the crime statistics that are released by the police department. I focus on residential burglaries and total crimes by district, and I always look at District 6 and 7 because they're neighboring and comparable in a lot of ways. And so I'm aware of this fight that you're talking about because I saw it. I think that the police department's resources have been reduced over the years. And I think they've deployed their people effectively, and they're doing the best they can with what they've got. But I think we really are going to have to think about investing some additional resources in the police department. Beyond that, I think we're confronted with two special issues that have impacted the burglaries that you're referencing. One is that state laws have changed with regard to how people are released from prisons, and so people are back on the street sooner, and some that probably shouldn't be. And the other is we've just all passed a referendum item, a ballot measure, that has reduced the police's ability to take some people off the street entirely by reclassifying felonies to misdemeanors. So I think that we're in a kind of a new climate, and that's complicated by the fact that in Pasadena, periodically we do have gang warfare, and we're in one of those outbreaks right now. We had 3 people shot in Washington Park this past week. And so when resources are being deployed to intervene in that kind of terrible gang violence, it does reduce the ability of the police to be responsive in some of the other areas and being proactive in staking out areas and intervening with residential burglary. So this is a very challenging issue for us because a police officer costs us about $150,000. And so we've got to find a way to get more resources to the police department.
20 seconds.
And make certain that there's a gap there for the and make certain that they are deploying their resources effectively as they can.
Thank you, Jerry. Jason?
Well, in regards to the second part of the question, regarding policing, I do believe that they do work with limited resources. They do a good job, so to speak, with the limited resources that they have. We have to be more vigilant as community members. We do have to organize more. We have to strengthen our neighborhood watch programs. We have to come together like this in regards to crime that we face and come up with common solutions. To alleviate crime, just like in other instances, it's hard to enforce your way out of crime. You have to address the situations directly. Like I said, we have to bridge these economic gaps in our city because it's those economic gaps that create more instances for crime. Studies will prove that. And if you start working on a livable wage and you start working on situations like mentorship and actually giving some resources to the people that may need them, we can alleviate some of these instances of crime because it is a social issue. It is because people do these things out of need and the lack of whatever they might feel they have or need. So we do have to address that issue. We do have to create more jobs in our city. We do have to create better choices and better options for our youth. And just become more involved, because the more that we volunteer in community programs, the more that we make our presence felt throughout our community, the less crime happens, because we start to see what's out there. We start to get to know some of these problem areas and some of these folks that just might need not a handout, but just help. And if we can assist some of these programs, as we become more involved in our community and with some of these organizations that are geared towards addressing some of these issues, we can do a lot to lower crime in our community.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
It's a great question, I think, for the mayor, because we have to bring stakeholders across the many issues that affect crime. You're absolutely right, Jason. I mean, this is about economic opportunity. It's about education. We have to deal with these things across a number of different areas. A couple of examples, I've worked with Daryl Qualls from the police department and Bill Huang on some of the work that they're doing around the reentry population and trying to create a social enterprise, a for-profit business that could employ people who've been recently paroled so that they have jobs and are less likely to be sent back to prison. Similarly, on the school side, the city of Chicago just recently did something revolutionary. They gave some of their most troubled kids summer jobs for a summer, and then they tracked the rates of violent crime amongst those kids after they finished that summer. They went down by 43%, not just for a month or so, but ongoing over time. These are the types of programs we have to look at broadly, in addition to supporting our police force, so that we are, as a city, addressing economic opportunity and education and housing and so many of the things that lead people to desperate acts, like crime. Now, there are great smart policing initiatives across the country. We should be a model for that. We should be looking at those. I also am a big fan, you asked about policing models. Community policing, I've been working in Watts for the last 12 years. I've worked closely with LAPD. In fact, many people who are sitting with the First Lady at the State of the Union have led that community policing effort in Nickerson Gardens. The nonprofit that I helped start has been working very closely with them and with HACLA and with other entities down in Watts to address a community policing model. We need to support our police force in that as well. Less than 8% of our police force less than 8% of our police force live in Pasadena, and they're working 3 days a week. So how are they possibly supposed to start create relationships with the community that's going to lead to better policing? So we need to really work on across the board a number of different issues to address this.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
So I hear the concern specific to West Pasadena about the number of break-ins in this area, but let me say, as a council member for District 1, there have been break-ins all over the city, and I think one of the things that we have to do is remember that we don't all just exist in our neighborhood, in our individual neighborhoods, and we have to start addressing issues as citywide issues. We know that crime is a result of individual and group needs that have not been met, whether we're talking about mental health, food, shelter, employment, and so we have to think of it in a much more broader way. We have a very well-recognized police department, and I respect the work of all of our police officers, but we have to remember that community policing and police work in general is threefold, both the enforcement, the prevention, and the intervention. And so specifically with regard to break-ins, we individually as homeowners and apartment owners have to do our part to make sure that we're not creating situations where we're encouraging certain individuals to be attracted to our homes. We also have to do a better job at our community policing model. As indicated earlier, police officers do not operate in a vacuum, and it's very much relationship-based. Part of that is living in the community, but also part of that is also making sure that the perception and the actual information that is in our community about some of the goings on in the police department is recognized and presented in an accurate way. As chair of the Public Safety Committee for the last 2 years, I've made an effort to have information more readily available and transparent on the city's website with regard to use of force incidences, making complaint forms more available to community members at different community sites, not just specifically at the police department. And so, again, I would just say that we have to remember that in order to operate in the best fashion and have the best relation with our police department, it's going to take all of us, and it is a relationship that should be based on trust and transparency.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
I think as mayor, it would be crucial to have a three-pronged approach to crime. And the reason I say it in that manner is because, as I said, I have 8 to 12 children. Certainly I've seen a lot of challenges with youth, with our community, in particularly with District 6, as I walked around for the last 6 weeks in your district, sharing with you my initiative. My initiative would be, one, to make sure we had a broader base community policing during the holidays, because primarily in this area you have a higher propensity of crime because of the holidays. That's also indicative of a community that needs more proactive approaches with youth and other people to be in tune with being active. And I say that because of my own experience as a mentor of youth, as well as, excuse me, as well as seeing what young people are concerned with. They're concerned about jobs. They're concerned about keeping busy. If they don't keep busy, they don't have jobs, of course they're going to find themselves in mischief or problems that you are going to be the subjects of their problems. And in order to avoid that, the mayor and in the community at large need to take on a model. In my initiative that I've handed out in my handout, I've addressed that. I've addressed programs that we can create summer jobs. A perfect example, which is ironic that my initiative started back in November, when we just found out that there was $6.4 million that was taken from our fund that we all pay each period when we make our utility bill. If you spread that over the 11 years, that would be about $600,000 that could have been allocated for programs. That could have went to youth jobs, that could have went to the police department, that could have went to a lot of different things that would have prevented us from having being targeted with crime. Now, I'm saying that to raise our awareness that we as mayor, especially after this last episode, must think differently. If we don't want crime to increase, we must think of what's the problem. The problem is, if it's youth that are robbing or burglarizing, something is causing it. Usually what's causing it is they either do not have anything to do or they don't have any money. They don't have money because there's no jobs. In my initiative, I would push to foster partnerships with companies to create small businesses that will give incentives for jobs. That's what's needed. I'm on South Lake Street. I've seen businesses go out of business 3 times with 3 different recessions. We've got to find sustainability.
You're far over.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alan. The next question, this will be answered first by Terry.
advisory committees, developing plans, making recommendations. Sometimes city government accepts those. Sometimes that time and effort is ignored by the city council or other aspects of government. A recent example is the public bathrooms added to Desiderio Park. Excuse me. As mayor, what would your attitude be towards citizen involvement in government, and what do you intend to do to ensure that the city council responds to local concerns?
Thank you. I'm a great proponent of citizen involvement. I've served on the Plan Commission and on the Design Commission in Pasadena. I spend a lot of time recruiting and vetting commissioners that I appoint to the various, to the 20-something commissions that the city has. I think it's absolutely vital. The commission system is absolutely vital, and I've always resisted elimination or reduction of the number of commissions, because I think commissions not only provide sound advice to the council, but also connect people to their government so that they don't feel separate and apart from the government. The specific reference that was made had to do with the public bathrooms at Desiderio. The Parks Commission actually recommended that the immediate neighbors rejected the idea of having public bathrooms. The Parks Commission recommended that there be public bathrooms. The council ultimately reserves judgment in terms of making the final decision. That's as it should be. When I served on the Plan Commission, I understood that we did a lot of work, made recommendations. Sometimes the council agreed, sometimes it didn't. Ultimately, the authority is vested in the council because that's the group that's elected and is supposed to take on the responsibility of reflecting citywide policies. So I think the fact that a neighborhood group or a commission may occasionally have their advice overruled is not a rejection, should not be viewed as a rejection of the commission system, but just recognizing that there's a process. Very often these issues there's a wide range of opinion in terms of what the appropriate conduct is, and I think that for the most part the council is mindful of what the commissions bring forward.
Thank you, Terry. Jason?
First of all, I'm a big fan of community involvement. I do believe that the role of these commissions and even oversight committees and things like that are very important. The role of council is to represent the views of the public, so without public involvement, we don't have anything to represent, honestly. So I want to encourage folks to keep on trying and keep on presenting their incidents and their cases to City Council and to continue to become involved. I ran for mayor to get my community involved because I know a lot of you come to City Council members, and that's great, but people from my community don't necessarily come to City Council meetings, and they don't see the importance of it. And I wanted to show them that we as a people do have a say in how our government is run, and that anyone can present a situation to council, anyone can be heard. But to show them, you really have to show them that. And that's why I wanted to be an example of how far you can take it. I'm so sorry, my mic cut off.
Thank you, Jason. 1 minute before Dawn starts. Please, if you have to leave, exit through the front of the building. A few people are exiting through the emergency exits and you're setting off alarms. not good. So please, if you need to leave, the way you came in is the way you need to go out. Thank you. I'm sorry, Jason.
No problem at all, but basically that's it. I am a fan of community involvement. I do encourage folks to keep trying. Whatever you think your situation is, please present it to council. And as mayor, I plan to make myself very accessible. I plan to be very responsive to the needs and suggestions of the community. Even as a business owner and a publisher, I get a lot of concerns, and I am responsive to those concerns, and that's why I tried to run for mayor, to see if I can bring more resources to the people that need them.
Thank you, Jason. My apologies for interrupting. Don?
So in all the classes actually I teach at USC, as you can imagine, when we talk about public policy, civic engagement is one of the key considerations, and I think we've reached a point in time where we all believe local problems are best solved by local people using local solutions, right? I mean, I think we have a sense of how to solve most of our most pressing issues if we figure out a way to communicate with each other. So clearly civic engagement is a piece of that. Now we also know that it's hard, right? So the city, I think sometimes we do an amazing job with civic engagement, and other times we go through the motions a little bit to check off the list that we asked people. So I think what people want the most is to know that we're making good use of volunteer time. If people are going to come spend that much time, they want to know that they were considered. Now, we may not always agree, unfortunately, even after people have spent a lot of time sharing their thoughts. And I think as a community, we have to accept that and really work towards figuring out what the force of the better argument is and how we, as a full community, can address that. But we have to look again at who is involved. Frankly, I think a lot of these commissions serve as a bit of a crony system sometimes. I mean, who is involved in the commissions? It's not representative of all of Pasadena. It's usually representative of the people who help us the most in our campaigns. And this is not the best way for us to approach this. So, and I don't mean to give you, I'm looking at my neighbor who's on a commission, so I'm not giving but again, I think, who's involved, how are they involved, when are they involved in the conversation, what is the outcome of their involvement? Whatever choice we make in terms of how we involve people, it has to be representative of all of Pasadena.
I saw you come.
Thank you. Jackie?
Pasadena has a history that's steeped in citizen involvement, and it's one that I unequivocally support. One of the ways that I've governed is to make decisions not just based on fact and practice, but listening to the voices that are not present. And in this instance, I listened very intently. You don't have to worry. I heard the concerns about the issues of restrooms as an attractive nuisance in the park, the cleanliness of the facility, lighting, the attractiveness of homeless persons possibly congregating in the park, and those are all very valid concerns. But I believe that points to issues that the city needs to take a better look at resolving, not just in this instance, if the bathrooms ever come into fruition, because as of right now, the bathroom portion of the project is not funded. But regardless of that, something great that did happen as a result of those conversations was a citywide analysis, which I support, of how we're upkeeping the facilities in all of the parks citywide. We have to remember that parks are a public asset, and in this instance of the restrooms for this area, it is a family project. And I'm sure Don can attest to this because he has children, but I know that when children are ready to go, whether you're old or young, you're just ready to go. And the closest restrooms, after hearing all of the facts, the closest restrooms for this particular project were at the Brookside area. And so I do believe that it's very important that we included restrooms in this project. As I said, we do need to look at citywide the cleanliness of bathrooms and resolve some of the issues that may result as a part of having restrooms that can attract negative behavior into our parks, and it's something that we need to address not just for this particular project, but citywide.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Well, I believe it's crucial for civic engagement. That's also one of the initiatives that I have included in my plan as mayor, is to make sure that we start with our youth and continue to foster that with the adults in our community. And the reason why is because when these issues come up about bathrooms, about how much we're going to invest, if you're not civically engaged, you really won't have a voice to have any kind of say-so. It is so imperative that your voice counts. And that's why this election is so important, that you are here tonight to hear what's going on, get your voice, to participate, so you know what we really need as a city. Yes, we have bathroom needs. To what extent? What costs? What scheduling? All these things need to be flushed out. So we get to the bottom of it. That was truly evident from my experience as a commissioner in Northwest to make sure that the bathrooms in all of the areas in Northwest have been addressed. But we got to make sure the community is aware of what that entails and what is involved with costs.
Thank you, Alan. Bill?
Well, Pasadena is a city where people expect to be involved, they are involved, and we're almost 100% much better because of it. It takes us a bit longer sometimes to get to decisions and to implement things, but so what? We're much better because of the involvement of our citizens, the fact that they take pride in what they're doing and they want to participate and actually do so. So I'm fully supportive of that. One example where I've had many such examples, but one that always strikes my mind is that, if you may recall, a number of years ago, what is now the Langham Hotel was owned by a Japanese company. They had an obligation on a periodic basis to put into the renovation of the facility a considerable amount of money. When they got to do that one point in time, they did a analysis to find out what earthquake provisions were in the building, and they found none. So instead of being able to renovate the building and do something with it, it basically was going to have to be demolished and start over again. So they sold the property. At that point in time, I thought, well, not sure what the neighbor is going to think about this. That was the area I represented, so let's get together with them and find out, because well, maybe they don't like a hotel, maybe they would have houses or whatever else. To my surprise, they said, we prefer the hotel. They don't have dogs and cats. We know what to expect there. They don't have children running around, and we prefer that. So at that point, I worked with the people who took over the property, purchased the property, and was asked by that individual, what are your thoughts on a hotel? I said, well, if you can get a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton here, we're going to be in wonderful shape. Well, they went down and contacted Ritz-Carlton. The owner or the manager for the U.S. of Atlanta came out here, looked at the site, fell in love with it. We have a Ritz-Carlton today, we have the Langham Hotel, and we're much better off because of citizen involvement in a very, very positive way. That's the Pasadena way, I believe.
Thank you, Bill. All right, now we have the audience participation time, where we will take questions from the audience. To ask a question, you will need to come forward. It will be first come, first serve. We'll handle as many questions as we can. So stand up and get ready to ask your question. Now, before you start to speak, Tom, I'd like to thank the Ninth Circuit Court for allowing us to fill to overflowing their courtroom, the WPRA for putting this on, the candidates for participating, and let you know that you should keep an eye out, those of you that get WPRA email, for information about when this forum will be broadcast on KPAP. We'll be able to look at it on Google TV. We'll also be posted on YouTube, and we'll have other information available in that email on the WPRA website. So with that, Tom Seifert, I believe that's our first question. We'll ask the question. It will go, in this case, to Jason first. It's his turn. And then, Tom, after you ask the question, if you could sit down and we'll go through the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another elected mayor at an adjacent municipality who has been successful at securing approximately $1 billion for the restoration of the LA River. The Army Corps of Engineers, which is a very integral part of that operation, has undergone a study, has begun a study of the Arroyo Seco, which is a tributary to the Los Angeles River, which is part of the whole river system. My question is, as this study goes forward, which we anticipate being completed in 2016, early 2016, how do you feel about the potential of stream restoration in the Arroyo, specifically in the lower Arroyo, from the Colorado Street Bridge to Busch Garden?
Thank you, Tom. Before Jason answers, I'll note that there are a number of empty seats now, so those of you standing or in an uncomfortable seat may wish to move to a more comfortable seat. Thank you. Jason, you're up.
Well, that's a bit of a tough question. I would have to respond by saying that I would like to get more community feedback on the situation. I would like to open the dialogue for that particular issue and to see how we can move forward, see what environmental impacts might be involved, see what resources are available, and see how we can kind of, tackle that situation and make a move towards either restoring it or towards whatever we have to do. But it takes community involvement, it takes the dialogue, it takes the meetings, and with the information that we receive, we can kind of move forward as a community. Because one thing I plan to do as mayor is not push my own agenda. I represent what the people want, and I want to relay that into any decision I make.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
Well, Tom, I have to congratulate you. We've had now 3 of these forums, and I've probably spoken to thousands of people, and that's the first time that question's been asked. So thank you for asking it. I think what Mayor Garcetti is doing in LA clearly is a slightly different issue given the LA River that they are addressing and really remediating something that has been such a blight on a good portion of LA for a very long time. Our portion of that probably is slightly different, but I think it does have a role in all of this, and clearly we do have to have some very good community conversations about what that would look like. Talk to some of the folks who are currently working in the Arroyo or doing activities down in the Arroyo to see how it would have an impact. It has to, I'm assuming, somehow connect to what's going on, the conversation around Hahamunga and how it starts north and comes through there. So this is a larger systemic conversation. Anything that I would think we would do would have to be connected to our overall goals around environment, air quality, the open spaces that we're trying to create as a city. And so I would want to take those into consideration and again, talk to a lot of folks in the community to see what the smartest action would be.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
I know we're trying to get into as many questions as you can this evening, but just in general, I think the city of Pasadena should definitely play a role in any issue that affects our city. Of course, stream restoration is an important issue, and as mayor, I would support any effort that would better educate our residents in the city and also allow us an opportunity to have a city stance or a community-wide stance and advocate that stance as mayor as the plan develops and comes into focus.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Thank you. I believe that the stream restoration question is huge. We're dealing with water issues right now in our own city, rationing. I think the real problem we're going to have to look at is costs. Fortunately for LA, they were able to get $1 billion to address their issue, their costs. As we've experienced with the Rose Bowl and the overrun, as we're experiencing with Hahamunga and dealing with the county and their role, it is a challenge. So I think for more than any reason, we would need outreach from the community to get a sense of what we're going to look at for costs, to see how we're going to create the stream restoration for Pasadena, time that it's going to take to implement it, and is this something that we can deal with in light of everything else that's going on with our budget. So those are the way, that's how I would approach it first and foremost, because again, if we don't have the confidence of our leaders here in Pasadena to make sure we can carry things out, then we're going to be challenged by considering moving forward to do anything.
Thank you, Alan. Bill?
I would say that an issue like this, I would begin by looking to the Parks and Recreation Commission for their take on it. I don't know whether they've studied the issue or not, but I would certainly want them to do that and to come back to the report, public report, as to what they have found and what their advice and whatnot are on that issue. Obviously, there has to be a very extensive and thorough public discussion of this. We can't just a sin because it's an environmental issue, we want to take stands on it. But I agree with you, it's a real issue, something we need to address, and I would do so by public involvement. And I think we also have to set some priorities, particularly for funding of things of the sort that we all would like to do a lot of things, but as we've heard repeatedly this evening, the city has limited resources. We got a Rose Bowl with quite a significant debt that needs to be addressed, and money found to take care of that. I'm not being all critical of Darrell Dunn or the Rose Bowl or whatever else, but that's a reality. So we have to set some priorities. Again, this would be a public process where the public would decide, what do we do as to A, B, and C, and then D, or whatever ranking this particular project would have. But I agree with it's an important project. I want to look at it. I'd start with the Parks and Recreation Commission and publicly and go forth from there, as I've said.
Thank you, Bill. Terry?
So it turns out we've had the community conversation on this issue, and the Parks Commission has weighed in on it very heavily over the years. We have a Lower Arroyo master plan that spells out in some detail what exactly should be happening down there in terms of stream restoration. This is really almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to try to capture federal resources to apply, and I've been talking with Tim Brick and the Arroyo Seco Foundation to try and identify ways that we can aggressively move forward Pasadena's position so that we're not left looking enviously to the south in terms of what's been achieved down below. That portion of the Arroyo is a very heavily used resource by walkers and hikers and runners and Maria and myself. And we know how much nicer and how much improved that could be with the appropriate resources. And in fact, it's important to know, it's important to have some institutional memory here, because I think not to be aware of the Arroyo master plan and what it entails is something that citizens need to be reminded of, I think, as well as candidates. And I think we should really exploit this opportunity and make something.
Thank you, Terry. Could we have the next question, please? And please introduce yourself.
My name is Michael Duran. I live in West Washington, Illinois. My question to the candidates is, are we ready for a major San Andreas Fault earthquake? And if not, what specific ideas do you have to help Pasadena get ready for a major event?
Thank you for that question. Don, I know that you're up first.
I'm not sure anyone in California or any of us as individuals are ready for the next major earthquake, at least of that magnitude. But clearly, as a city, we have plans in place, but they're, I don't know that they've been adequately communicated. How many of you know of a city plan around earthquake preparation? So the person who asked the question. So that says to me, regardless of what we have in our files in City Hall, they are useless unless all of us know what that plan is. And so communication and engagement with all of you is clearly key in that. You know, the Public Health Department has a huge role in this. Our emergency services have a huge role in this. You know, just making sure that we've aligned those services and they have a clear plan across different services is huge. But again, I think you know, the best plans on earth, if they sit in a file box, don't do us any good. So I think it's very important for us to also consider, you know, Jason frequently talks about branding or marketing. I mean, there's a campaign attached to this to make sure we're all clear on what we do and where we go. And I will admit, you know, I have 4 children and we don't have a clear plan on what we do or where we go or where we meet. So all of us need to work on that, and the city can lead that conversation.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
I actually have been preparing my district to be able to be self-sufficient as suggested for at least 72 hours in the event of an emergency, not just an earthquake. And so since I was elected in 2007, I have been holding annual Pasadena Emergency Response Training Sessions, which is a PERT boot camp that I worked with our fire department to be able to hold for my residents. It's a shortened version of what is now the CERT program, and so we've held that for over the last 4 years. We've trained over 460 residents of District 1, and now this year we are moving, in fact, on February 28th, to the full training that's going to be offered to residents of District 1, and in the event spaces available extended to other residents as well. But I believe District 1 is a model for making sure that our residents know that although the city will be here in the event of emergency, it's incumbent on each of us individually for ourselves and our families to be prepared, and I've taken the steps to make sure that residents of District 1 at the very least have the information and also have the opportunity to go through the training and to get a taste of what it will be like and what they will have to deal with in the event we have an emergency.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Thank you. What I've done with my plan as mayor is to develop an inclusive citywide emergency preparedness program. Part of that would be exactly what the question posed, which would be to team up with Caltech, make sure we have a good understanding of technology, what to expect, how to begin to understand how we need to prepare for major earthquakes, work closely with them. We have them right here in our backyard. Then I know as a child growing up here in the 60s and 70s, I don't want to go too far, but we were definitely taught to be prepared for earthquakes. We were taught how to respond. We were taught how to have foods and everything else developed for it. I believe that we have a great opportunity here in Pasadena to become the model city to showcase preparation for a major earthquake. And I think we have the tools in our backyard. I think we have the talent. And it's just a matter of leadership moving forward with that guidance.
Thank you, Alan. Bill?
The question correctly observes that we do sit on this Andreas Fault and that this is potentially earthquake dangerous territory. I think we all have the habit of kind of forgetting things. We think back to, I think it was 1989, we had the Northridge earthquake. And then a couple years later, we had another one that occurred. And I know I was in San Francisco taking a deposition, and suddenly one of my opposing counsel came in and said, "You might be interested in knowing your area had an earthquake." So it got my attention in a big hurry. But I think as time goes by and no earthquakes continue or come back, we tend to forget about that. So yes, we need to do a much better job of keeping ourselves alert. I, courtesy of my wife Carol, in the trunk of my car now have a big box of things in case some emergency happens. I'm prepared to live and not have to go home and all that sort of thing. She has the very same thing. That's hardly a plan for the city. So I think as the mayor, again, we would have the obligation to get people back together, revitalize the affiliation we have with Caltech, which has been a very positive affiliation, by the way, and very productive. But bring them back into the picture and get us back in the year 2015, what we can expect realistically, what if it happens, what we do about it, etc. So that's the approach I would take.
Thank you, Bill. Terry?
So it turns out that the city has been working hard on this issue. The expectation is that it's not just 72 hours anymore, it's really a week. The expectation is that in a major event, people are going to have to fend for themselves if it's an area-wide event for likely up to a week. Like Jackie, in our district, we've had these boot camps. We conducted one about 6 weeks ago at PCC. I'm sorry, Don didn't take advantage of it. But I think that in terms of the alignment of the resources, I think that the silos have been broken down between the city departments and the Emergency Operations Center. Calvin Welch should be hearing this talk, our retired fire chief, and even an alternate Emergency Operations Center are in place. But beyond that, the latest planning has been talking about communications, how to reach out to people. We learned some important lessons from the big windstorm that we had a couple of years ago with all the power outages, and we had people without power for up to 5 days. And we learned that, for example, ham radio operators, are fantastic resources, and as an extension of that, the city is working on reactivating or activating a low-power AM station for the city for emergency purposes. And using the fire stations, because they're within walking distance of almost everyone, the 8 fire stations around the city, as a place to disseminate information. Because we discovered in the windstorm, when the cell phones weren't working and the phone lines were down, people wanted to know where to go. I was walking around writing notes to people. It's not very effective. But if people can come to know that they can come to the fire station, not necessarily to get supplies, that you've got to take care of on your own, but at least to get information in the absence of electronic communication. So I think the city is moving aggressively. I certainly agree that we need to do more, but this is not a vacuum.
Thank you, Jerry. Jason?
Well, considering we're still discussing digging a tunnel through the whole city, I don't think we're prepared as we should be for a major earthquake. I think we have to communicate the situation. I think we have to have a citywide awareness campaign initiated to communicate some of our emergency strategies, and also we have to strengthen our sense of community in our city, because when something does happen, it's not going to be FEMA that comes saves us. It's going to be the people sitting right next to you, and the people that are in these stores when you're in the store, the people that are in our community are the ones that are going to save our lives. So I think that not just communicating the safety plans and things that we have implemented as a city, we should also just support community events and support things and instances in which we can interact and get to know each other, because when something happens, it's going to be us depending on ourselves.
Thank you, Jason.
The next question coming, and I'm not sure, people need to stand up as they're going to ask. Okay, so, Nina, you go first. You've been stood up in line, so please introduce yourself.
My name is, is this on? My name is Nina Chomsky, and as many of you know me very well, I'm president of the Linda Vista Annandale Association. My question concerns the Hahamanga Sediment Removal Project. I have the honor to expend much effort and energy serving on the working group, and we came up with what we felt was a very well-reasoned compromise that solved the flooding issue, solved the issue of the sediment in Hahamanga, but protected the neighborhoods to the greatest extent we could. There are still going to be enormous impacts, but it's what we have to do to solve the problem. But we felt would leave the residents without enormous public health impacts, leave our freeways and our traffic flowing, sort of, and solve as many problems as we could for neighborhoods. This working group document was well received by the current council, and then it went to the county, where our staff, many of us felt abandoned us. And in fact, the county adopted this and adopted their own project, which is extreme, adopted an EIR, and then our staff did work to get some of the our suggestions in there, but the basic ones are not accepted by the county. The amount of sediment, the number of trucks, the intensity of what is going to go on there for years. Admirably, a group of citizens has filed a CEQA suit to challenge that EIR, similar to a group of us who have challenged certain suggestions for events in the Rose Bowl, because sometimes we have to take care of ourselves. And I appreciate how you're all committed to public participation. So I suggest that you listen to many of us on this issue. So I want to know, how committed are you to the working group recommendations, and how committed are you to asserting the city's rights under the easement agreement with the county? It appears very obvious to many of us that the county is exceeding its rights under the easement. The city of Pasadena owns that land. We feel the working group solution is the best. What will you do to get this adopted by the county and have them back off from the extreme position they're taking now? Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Jackie, this is yours first.
Thank you, Nina. First, let me start by saying I think it's an incorrect assertion that city staff abandoned the recommendation of the working group that the city council unanimously endorsed and supported going forward to the Board of Supervisors. With this issue, and as we can see with the 710 tunnel issue and many others, the ultimate decision does not rest with the City of Pasadena. However, it is within our discretion to continue to advocate and utilize legal means and whatever other measures we have to hopefully encourage enough of the members of the Board of Supervisors to reverse their decision and implement the plan that removes the sediment at a less rapid rate. At this point, the City Council remains committed to examining what other mechanisms we have left to oppose the current plan. I believe the City Council, and I've asked the City Manager to approach the supervisors about perhaps taking another vote, because there are currently two new Board of Supervisor members that were not there back when this vote was taken. And so I think it presents a new opportunity to present our Pasadena alternative to them and see if they will make a different decision.
Thank you, Jackie. Alan?
Nina, I agree with you. In my 4 years of city as the Northwest Commission, we have supported this endeavor to get it off the ground. And with that in mind, as mayor, I would use all of our resources to advocate to move it forward. I think it's something we definitely need to have done. I think if we continue to play around with it, it's going to drag on, and until you get someone who is going to be a strong advocate out of the City Hall, it will not happen. So I can certainly attest to you my commitment, because it's been there the last 4 years, coming out of the commission, because the Hahamanga is part of our territory as Northwest Commissioners that we have certainly supported it. So you've definitely got my support, and as mayor, I will commit to every resource to move it forward.
Yeah, I've also reviewed the plan that was adopted by the City Council and compared it with the one that the county is going forward with. And you're quite correct that the impact on neighborhoods, the environment, etc., are far less with the Pasadena plan. And as my understanding from reviewing it and all that is, it makes eminent sense to move forward with that. Why the county did not go forward, and with the plan we're proposing, I really don't understand. But I do think that we need to push forward with that, because the county's plan is going to have tremendous impacts on the neighborhood. We want to avoid that if we possibly can. I don't know how enough about the litigation to know whether that's going to have an effect or not. But regardless of that, as mayor, I would work with the county supervisors to try to get them, as was suggested, perhaps to step back and take another look at this and allow us to present a complete program or make a complete presentation as to what the impacts of this are going to be. There's no need, as my understanding from reviewing it, to go forward with the county's plan. They can certainly get by with what we're doing. It may take a bit longer, but the impact will be far less. And from the standpoint of our own community, that's the way that we want to go, and that's what we should pursue. We have to do a good job of getting other communities involved with us. I mean, locking down a Flintridge, for example, are not maybe not directly affected, but they're a neighboring community. And so again, I would work with other communities to get them joined with us in a taking position to support the plan that we're proposing.
20 seconds. Thank you, Bill. Terry?
So I referenced the Hahamanga working group as really a model process, and what I suggested for the 710 as well, because I think that kind of citizen panel, citizen expert panel, really can do terrific things, and the process was tremendously successful. Unfortunately, the county supervisors didn't agree. And I think that the reason that they didn't agree is because there was pressure to do something, and because there was a kind of a slavish devotion to a standard, a county-adopted standard, to DDE. Well, I don't want to get to it, of having to scrape more sediment than they really needed to. And so the city was reluctant to litigate and sue on the EIR, and in part because, frankly, the city needs the county in a lot of areas, and there was great reluctance to get in an adversarial mode with the county. So really the citizen group, the Arroyo Seco Foundation that has brought the litigation is carrying the water for us, and I think we can use that litigation and the hope for desire to settle the lawsuit to revisit this with the county supervisors, and it was pointed out there are 2 new supervisors now, and to really kind of meet with Mike Antonovich, who's the key actor in this, and bring some pressure to bear and demonstrate to him that really there is another alternative, and this magic standard is not something that needs to be slavishly held on to. And I also think, and this is a little obscure, but this is the city's real estate. There is an easement, a very old easement that governs this, and I think if push comes to shove and we're unsuccessful on the CEQA front and the political front, the city does have one more card to play in terms of pursuing its easement rights for what's happening on our real estate.
Thank you, Jerry. Jason?
First off, I'd like to commend and support the recommendations and the efforts of the working group. I believe that it's citizens like that keep our city from being torn apart by outside influences. Just like in the 710 incident, I believe that we need to communicate the importance of these issues to more citizens. It's not just the job of the council to communicate these importances, it's the job of our citizens too. If we educate each other a little more about some of these issues and come in numbers, we can create changes, because strength is in numbers. And when there's only a select population that know about certain issues, it doesn't really have the impact as if everyone knew those issues. So I would suggest and encourage people to educate each other, so that when we do come together, and we do have to, when it is time to present our case to higher authorities, that we do have the numbers that represent our position, and that we do have solutions to combat whatever they can give to us. So it is about educating ourselves and solving our own problems, because they won't back off until we can solve the problem. And if we solve the problem, then they'll be forced to back off.
Thank you, Jason. Don?
Well, I think the master plan for Ha'amonga clearly represents the goals of our city, right? And the county ignored those goals in every way, shape, and form, particularly around air quality, aesthetics, scope. I support the SLOW program, Nina. I mean, I think it makes all the sense in the world to do this over time, slowly, maintaining the needed capacity for Devil's Gate. It's funny, I teach negotiation, and so, this would run counter to what I generally would teach my students, but in a case like this, we need to hunker down and fight, right? And maybe we'll put Nina at the front of the fight, because I wouldn't pick a fight with her, but, of course we need the county, but you know what? The county needs Pasadena too. The county needs Pasadena too, and I think our voice needs to be amplified in this and make sure that on these issues where we keep finding ourselves saying, gosh, we really don't like it, but it's not really our choice, we need to start to address this, I mean, Tom, you mentioned Eric Garcetti and his work with the White House. He has gone and I think created a connection between LA and DC that we've never had before. That's about leadership. That's about establishing relationships. That's about setting a tone that makes other entities realize that they need to be supportive of what we're doing. And this issue in particular is a big one for us to assert that.
Thank you, John. We have time for one more question. The gentleman has been patiently sitting here. We only have time for this one more question if we do the following. If we limit the answers to about a minute, about half of what you were originally given. And second, I'd like to ask, since we are going to end by 9, actually a minute or two before, if the audience could wait, because I know you want to have a chance to actually applaud and thank them for participating in this at the end of the forum. So please introduce yourself. Go ahead, and Alan, you will be first on this.
My name is Matthew Tan. I live very close by here. I commend your interest in being a public servant. I think that's a very noble job. Somehow I came across in this evening that most answers given were very general and not very specific. I'm very concerned about the educational system. The strength of our nation and the strength of city lies with our young people and with our children. somehow the public school in Pasadena is not well thought of. Why? I don't know. You may have more specific answers. In other parts of the world, in other places, the public school usually is the best. But here, the private school is the best. Why? I don't know. I think you might have more specific ways of addressing the problem. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you for your question. Alan?
Well, Matthew, I think that is a profound closing question. And the reason why I say that is because as a public school recipient here in Pasadena, I too have the same concerns as a real estate broker who's the first line of defense or offense to sell your house or get rid of it, one of the two. We contemplate that discussion with every buyer that comes to the city of Pasadena. As a committee member of PFAR, that's Pasadena Board of Realtors, I'm on the committee to reach out to develop better interactions with PUSD. And trust me, it's a difficult challenge. What I believe we must do are take baby steps. In my initiative as mayor, we would focus in on just that very issue. How do we improve our school system? Right now, Pasadena School District is working on K through 5th grade. They do have a program right now where they are implementing a better standard, better focus. However, they have abandoned 6th through 12th. In the program,
As I said in my opening comments, education, public education in the city is a critical issue for us. We really got to do a much better job of working with PUSD and helping them move forward. At PCC, where I currently serve as elected trustee, we've begun a couple of programs, a Pathways program, for example, working with PUSD, where if their students get basic skills under control and out of the way early on, we guarantee them enrollment in the classes they need to be able to graduate or transfer in 2 or 3 years' time. We started a dual enrollment program with PUSD where children taking certain classes will get credit for both PUSD and PCC, again, to help them complete their transfer or graduation requirements in PCC. And one thing I would like to pursue would be to look at pre-kindergarten school-age children. Those who cannot afford to go to a private school, and I would like to begin the process, as the mayor of Long Beach has himself, begin to raise money privately for the purpose of being able to let those children go to school, because the records show the earlier students start learning, the more likely it is they will be successful in school, be able to graduate, go to college, or get a job.
Thank you, Bill. Terry?
So, the reason that the private schools outperform the public schools in Pasadena is in part because there's been such a long tradition of private school education in Pasadena. And they attract some of the energy and some of the resources that might otherwise be invested in public schools. And the public schools have the burden of dealing with the children who have many of the greatest challenges in terms of language difficulties, in terms of poverty, in terms of not being supported at home as much as other children are, in terms of foster kids. I mean, there are a whole series of reasons in my 1-minute answer. But the trend line here is positive. And I'm optimistic that if we take our city resources that are already being spent by the health department, by the recreation department in terms of after-school programs, the preschool programs, we really can make a difference in our public school education.
Thank you, Terry. Jason?
Specifically, I think our public schools suffer because we do have an abundance of private schools in our community. I do believe we have more private schools per capita than many other cities in Southern California. And that stemmed from desegregation of our school from years ago, when people did not want to go to public schools with other kids that they didn't want to go to school with. The fact that that has changed did not change the fact that we still have a lot of people supporting private schools. So I think it comes down to public participation once again. We have to educate our parents, or the parents of these students, of the importance of public schools and the effectiveness of them. I know that personally I don't have any children in public school, but I volunteer every week at Madison Elementary for Reading Partners, and we also help bring that reading program to Madison Elementary through the Fact in the Neighborhood Leadership Institute. So there's a many things that we can do as a public to create strength in our public schools, but it does take awareness, it does take involvement, it does take going out your way to participate and volunteer.
Good.
Don? Thank you, Mr. Tam, for your question. First of all, again, our public schools have an 80% graduation rate. So, we talk about fixing them. What we want to do is strengthen the good work that I think a lot of our schools are doing. I've been working in Watts where there's a 70% dropout rate, so that's a broken district. But nonetheless, it's unevenly distributed. We know that. I'll give you one very specific one because otherwise I won't answer your question. I've been talking to the funders, the private foundations that have funded the Office of Strategic Partnerships for the Mayor of Los Angeles. And their goal was to try to create better partnerships across the sectors. They're not real happy right now with the current mayor because he's using them as a blank checkbook. My argument to them was, what are you doing trying to throw money down the hole in LAUSD when you can come to Pasadena and have a significant impact on a school district? And so my very specific proposal is for them to privately fund over a long period of time, preferably at least a decade, a training program where we train and house a volunteer coordinator privately funded on every public school campus in this city so that they coordinate the relationship between nonprofits, businesses, and schools to share resources.
Thank you, Don. Jackie?
So I will slightly disagree with Mr. Morgan, and especially because he specifically mentioned LAUSD. I would say that every child, regardless of what district they live in, deserves to have a quality public school education, and maybe the drop in the bucket, maybe it is a drop in the bucket for LAUSD. Of course, we would willingly accept the money here, but every student deserves that, and we know that us having a successful public school education is a function of many things, not the least of which is quality teacher salaries, smaller class size, the need for additional funding, and investment in early childhood education. And so, again, I do think that we have to do a better job at following up the statement that we support our public schools with action. And for those individuals in our community that do have children, school-age children, we don't have declining enrollment in this community because we don't have enough children. The numbers are there. We have census numbers. As Vice Mayor, I sit on the Big A Committee, which is the mayor and several other city employees and school district employees. And we have to put our children in the public schools, point blank period, in terms of enrollment and making sure that we have enough children in each school site so that all the schools can stay open. But we do have to do a better job at promoting the public schools and promoting the successes that we have, and not just continuing to focus on the challenges.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you all. Jason, Don, Jackie, Alan, Bill, Terry.